Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you my recent experience of going to India from US. India is my hometown, and this travel experience during the COVID times has been very illuminating for my own self. There were a lot of things that I didn't expect during my flight and even before my flight that I actually was not hoping for, but I found out later, and then I decided that I should make a video on this. So this kind of content is not something that I generally show off in my channel, but not only am I making this video for you to gain informations on what you should expect during your flight, but also because I think that you know there are a lot of uh, small things that we miss while we are traveling in different places, and these are kind of important to us, but we kind of overlook them. There are certain things that I didn't find was suitable for me during the flight, and I wanted to share with you my experience and learn from you that what you think could have made the flight experiences for passengers better than what it is during this time. So, for all of you who do not know what this is during the 2020s, I mean, for all those future people who might be stumbling upon this video, during the COVID 2020, initially there was a travel ban that was going on across countries. And then once travel started, people were deciding to travel here and there, and flights were getting booked, flight tickets were very expensive, and things like that were happening. 2020 was a really uh, kind of overwhelming year for a lot of us. There were a lot of mixed emotions, and I would try to remove my emotions from being expressed during this video because I don't want to become too emotional while making this video. But this whole traveling experience was too overwhelming and even too much straining for me. So that's why I decided to make this video later than when I had initially planned to make this video while I was traveling, because I was trying to reflect on what happened and what I could have done in order to feel much more safer and comfortable. So with that, let me begin and let you know what was going on over there. So I took my flight during the first week of December 2020. Prior to my flight, I myself watched a lot of YouTube videos about what was going on, how people were traveling to India from US, from UK, and what things were there, what were the rules, and everything. And I found out that although there were a lot of information out there, there were a lot of things that were contradicting with each other. So let me give you a small example. I found a video where they mentioned that the RT-PCR test needs to be done 72 hours prior to your flight time, your initial flight time. That is like the first flight you are taking from US for your international travel to India. However, the governmental site mentions that you can take the test 96 hours prior to your flight time and no longer than 96 hours. So that YouTuber who had made the video actually mentioned that if you get it done 96 hours and not 72 hours before, the problem is once you reach to the immigration site, which could be New Delhi or Bengaluru for some people, in the immigration centers itself, they are mentioning that maybe you have taken the examination 96 hours before, but it is not valid. So this is happening for certain people because although I heard this information, I myself decided to take the test only 96 hours before and not 72 hours before, because 72 hours before the flight time is really a very short span. It's basically 3 days, and within 3 days, if for some reason your test results don't come out, then it's actually taking a risk. So I decided to go for the longer time period, which was like the 4 days. I know 3 or 4 days really doesn't make a big difference, but when you are really, in the kind of how is it called, the anticipation that maybe you might not be getting your results in time, it might be better to go for the 96 hours time period than the 72 hours time period. In anyways, I got my test done and I was observed to be COVID negative. This was the first time I was so happy to get a negative result. And my flight from Pullman, where I stay in US, was a early morning flight. So my flight was at 5:20 a.m. and I had to reach the airport early in the morning. I had this feeling that in US people are going to maintain social distancing a lot, at least in Pullman, because Pullman is a very small town and uh, mostly there are students over there. And generally, I would assume that students are well educated and they will be maintaining social distancing. But to be honest, this was my experience. So once I reached over there, I checked in and we were going we were boarding the flight actually. We were going on the staircases. People stopped maintaining social distancing. Like there was zero social distancing. And they just like hopped onto the flight like without any distance within each of ourselves. So for me, myself, I was trying to stay away from other people because I really didn't want to go too close to any other person. Uh, Basically, back in my home, I stay with my family, so I didn't want to carry any germs with me during my flight back to India to my family, so that I can prevent them from having any kind of disease or anything like that. I am really scared of this COVID thing, and I'm not ashamed of saying that. I know that people get cured from this situation, but I also know that people suffer a lot from the COVID infection. So if you can prevent from COVID infection by taking personal measures, I don't see why we need to like really rush during such situations and expose ourselves and others to such kind of diseases. So anyways, what people have done, it's their thing, it's not my thing. But for my personal thing, I believe that it's better to take a measure of social distancing. And when people are already talking about social distancing and wearing a mask, it might be a better idea to wear them in order to protect yourself and others. So this was my experience like while I was taking my first flight from Pullman to Seattle. While in Seattle, I realized people were actually maintaining more of the social distancing norms and were taking care of themselves. And throughout the Seattle airport, my experience was pretty good. Then from Seattle, I traveled to San Francisco. Oh, just to give you an update on like what the situation is for the flights. Uh, Generally, the flights are having a lot of lag time. The lag times are longer than what you would generally expect. So basically, you would have to stay in the airport for longer times than you expect because some of the flights are getting delayed, some of the flights are getting cancelled. Even like before 24 hours of your flight, there have been flights that have been reported to get cancelled. And so make sure that you stay updated with your flight plans, what is happening, and also like don't be scared of this information that meals are not available on flight, because even on my ticket it was said that meals are not available, but throughout the flight there are snacks that are being provided. For the longer international flights in between destinations, like the destinations that are cross Atlantic or cross Pacific, they are providing you with in-flight meals. And for the smaller domestic flights, they are providing you with smaller snacks, such as with cookies and with drinks. So it will not be that you will be hungry over the whole period that you will be flying. I didn't know this information properly. Like for me, I had heard both of the cases where there was foods provided and there were foods that was not provided and people had to carry their food. So I decided to carry my food with me. But honestly, the amount of food I was carrying with me. Once I reached to India and reached to my final destination, I realized I had a lot of leftover meals that would have been better if I had not carried them with me. I mean, it was just some amount of extra luggage that would have been better off if I didn't carry it with me in the very first place. So, and even in the airports, there are different restaurants and cafe from which you can really order something if you are really, really hungry. So you don't need to carry your food with you the whole time. So then from Seattle, I had to travel to San Francisco to board my next flight. And when I reached San Francisco, I realized that the terminal that was actually meant for the people that were flying from San Francisco to New Delhi was very overcrowded. It was honestly so overcrowded that there was no sitting place for a lot of people. Now, for me, I'm a young person. I can basically sit anywhere and I mean, sit or stand throughout the whole 4 hours prior to boarding time that I reached there. But for older citizens, it might not be that comfortable. And also for children or for kids, because uh, kids are not accustomed to such situations. They might feel upset during this whole experience of, like, not getting a seat around and not knowing what to do. It was so overcrowded. I'm going to share a picture with you on what the situation was over there. So as you can see, it was really very crowded, and even there was like crowd on the upper level and the lower level from which you were supposed to board your flight. So it was that much crowded, and there. So because it was crowded, definitely I could not get a port for uh, actually plugging in my laptop or my phone so that I could get it charged uh, before I was flying. So in that case, if you cannot get your phone charged or anything, don't be worried, because even in your international flight, you will be having a charging point that you can access to charge your phone. But make sure that your phones are always charged, because sometimes you might get flight updates on your phone, and if you don't have your phones updated or phones charged, you are not going to be able to see those informations. So prior to San Francisco, all the flights I boarded, I had a seat next to me that was empty. But the flight from San Francisco to New Delhi, which was a very long one, in that flight, the seat next to me was actually occupied. Now, to be honest, I think that, for the longer flights, in between two passengers, at least there should be one seat gap, because these are long period flights, and in these flights there are meals that are being provided. So just for the comfort level of the passengers, if you have like a seat empty between two passengers, it might be much more useful and much more safer for the passengers themselves than to have all the seats packed. Basically all the seats in that flight were completely filled. It wasn't like that there was like less occupancy in that flight. Moreover, this time I have realized that my total cost for traveling was way more than what it is during the normal times. And this is something that I did expect, because there was a travel ban for a very long time. This aviation company really didn't make much profit during this travel bans and the lockdown periods during this time, and I would assume that they would actually increase the flight prices and everything. So that was not something that was unexpected from me. But since the flight cost was high, I would expect that the kind of services they would provide would be better, but no, it wasn't. Not only that, the other thing I realized was the compliances with the rules for some of the passengers that were traveling. So, right in front of me, there was this elderly woman who was traveling, and often during the flight, she was just removing her mask. The thing is that on flight it is mentioned that you should be wearing your mask unless you're eating. While in flight, while you are sitting, you should be wearing your mask. But she was keeping on opening her mask. Now, 3 times I have seen the air hostess come and tell her that you need to wear the mask, but she was not wearing her mask for more than 50% of her flight time. I know this is her personal thing. This is completely her personal thing. But if I was the passenger sitting next to her, I would not feel comfortable. Now, for me, I would have directly told her that she should wear her mask or she should just, you know, get off from the flight. Now, definitely getting off from flight is not possible, as everybody knows. But while you're traveling, you should be respectful to your fellow passengers around you and, you know, make sure to wear your mask and not be that kind of a person who doesn't care about what other people think and just remove the mask and, start doing whatever you want because it might be really, really uncomfortable. So, to all of those people who are planning to travel, I just ask of you to be respectful of your fellow passengers. Now, my fellow passengers who was sitting next to me was really the kind of a person who was himself very hygienic because once he got up on the flight, he kind of sterilized the whole seat like a number of times with his spray, the sterilization spray that he was carrying. And of course, in the flight, we were provided with extra mask, and also, if you need, they are giving you extra sanitization wipes. So I did carry with myself my own sanitizer, but I also took the sanitization wipes whenever I felt like it was necessary for me to use. And so generally you can maintain your hygiene while you are flying, so don't be worried about that. And then the meals that they were providing, uh, to be honest, some of the meals were cold, like were freezing cold. And those are the kind of meals that really you can't have while they are cold. But I can understand, during this time it's hard for them to warm them up and then provide them to the passengers because nobody wants to eat an unsealed food or, you know, it's kind of harder for the uh, airline services to provide you with meals that they were the quality of meals that they were providing pre-pandemic times. So the quality of food is not what you might be expecting. And just to give you, the kind of thing that you might find in the flight. For me, I didn't find that that was a big issue, but I did find that for some of my fellow passengers, they were just like, kind of blaming the kind of food that was provided to them. So honestly, during this kind of pandemic time, you should not be expecting too much from other people. Now, before we boarded the flight from San Francisco to New Delhi, over there, they were checking your COVID test reports if you had, and also if you have reported in the self-reporting form. So, with this, I would inform you with the different forms that you need to fill up before you reach India. I had to fill up 2 forms. One is a self-reporting form or the SRO, and one is an exemption form or the ERO. Now, your self-reporting form and the exemption form should be filled up prior to your boarding. In my case, I filled up my self-reporting form and my exemption form 48 hours before my travel time. I gave them all the documents they needed, which was mainly one of your IDs. It could be your Aadhaar card or your passport or your voter ID card, and also uh, your your report for the COVID test that says that you are COVID negative. So those are the kind of documents that you need to upload in the governmental site that tells you that you need to fill up for the self-reporting form and the exemption form. The benefit of having the exemption form before you travel is that once you have the exemption form and once they go through your exemption form, they will not ask you to have a institutional isolation. They would rather ask you to reach your home and have a self-isolation or self-monitoring at your home. So that's why I ask of you to take the test before you leave to India from US or UK or wherever you're traveling, in case if you're traveling to India, because these are the rules for India. And my final destination was Kolkata in India. So from San Francisco to New Delhi, in that flight, right before the flight was boarded, the people who were in the airport were checking our temperature and checking if we have filled in the self-reporting form. So once you exhibit your documents over there, then you are allowed to get into the pre-boarding place where you can stand and wait for your flight. So I thought that was a good thing to do, because some of the times, like, some people might forget to fill in the self-reporting form, and they might be able to fill up the self-reporting form right before they board in their real flight across the two countries. As I was going through my experience of what happened during the flight, uh, one thing I thought was important for me, or at least what I followed while I was flying, was, uh, while eating your food, I thought that it might be safer, if uh, between two passengers there is a little bit of time lag between when each of them are actually taking their food in, because you don't want to take your food along while your co-passenger is also taking in the food, in case if your co-passenger is not a person from your own family, because in that way you might be able to still maintain a little bit of distancing from your own self. uh, it is not necessary, but in case, if you are germophobic like me or something like that. Now, my flight experience overall was more or less kind of nice. And once I reached Delhi, so when I reached Delhi, it was in the middle of night. Well, it was early morning, but it was still night. And then over there, the Delhi airport was very, very clean. And over there, the thing was pretty systematic. So once you reach over there, they are seeing your SRO form, and then they are telling you, depending if you have taken the COVID test prior to your boarding, or if you haven't taken your COVID test, to form two separate lines. Once you form the two separate lines, so I was basically into the form that was requesting for the exemption, and I had my exemption form and everything. So you follow the counter, and then once you reach the counter, they actually stamp your uh, ticket, the ticket that was used in your last flight, that was taken to reach your port of entry to India. They will stamp your form, and then they will ask you to go to another counter in which they will give you a stamp. So there is another stamp. This stamp will be either on your wrist. It will be on your wrist if you are just leaving directly out from that airport. Like for the passenger who was in front of me, she was her last port uh, was finally to Delhi and not to any other state out of New Delhi. So for her, they gave her the stamp on her wrist. For me, my next port of entry was actually to Kolkata. So they gave my stamp in my ticket itself. They would stamp the ticket, and I am supposed to show that ticket. Now, they stamped my ticket, and this is what my ticket looks like. Let me see if you can figure out what was wrong in this ticket. So do you see? My ticket says that I need to self-monitor myself till December 20, but not of December 20, 2020, but of December 20, 2019. Which means I need to do a time travel, go back to 2019 and start my self-monitoring, it seems. I'm just joking. But you may understand where I'm coming from. So I wish they had actually changed this stamp, because this is hilarious. In any ways, so I got the stamp, and then after that, I had to wait in the airport itself to board my next flight. Now, before boarding my next flight, this was what I went through in my own country's airport. And also, not only it's just any airport of my country, it's the airport of New Delhi, which is the capital of India. So basically, my flight from Delhi to Kolkata was delayed, and that's why I had to make sure that I check in my luggage before I actually board in, and I wanted to check in earlier than just the 4 hours prior to the boarding time. Now, in order to check in myself, I had to go through the whole system of actually getting my boarding pass and everything. So I got my boarding pass, and then I wanted to enter through the Delhi airport, but over there, the police that was actually guarding the gate said that my boarding hours was way the time at which I reached the airport was way earlier than my boarding time. So he didn't want me to get inside the airport. Now, just to give you the concept of what was going on in Delhi, so uh, New Delhi is a very nice state, and it's a very nice union territory and everything. And it's uh, so there is both this contradiction that it is safe and it is unsafe place for women itself, but honestly, the thing is that I was already inside the airport. For me to leave the airport and come back again just to board the flight is very useless. Well, that is what it seems to me. And in order to actually board the flight, I had to go from the ground level to the upper level, to access the lounge for staying over there. But the problem was that the police who was attending or guarding the gate said that I should not get inside the airport terminal directly, because right now there was still 16 hours before my flight was uh, available, and I should actually go to some hotel or something. Now, honestly, I felt that a hotel was very unsafe, and I had to kind of verbally disagree with the police. Like, I generally do not disagree with police or soldiers or anything of that sort, because I have a respect for them and I didn't really want to disrespect this person, but I felt that it was a very stupid idea coming out from him that I should actually get out, go to a hotel and, waste my money in a hotel because of a thing that is completely not in my hands. Like, if it was my fault on not like you know boarding the boarding a proper flight or something, I would understand. So it's the problem of the airlines that delayed my flight. So I should still be able to access the lounge area or the waiting area so that I can take rest over there, rather than getting out of that place and boarding a hotel of which I'm completely not aware of, and I'm not sure if it's safe or anything. So I thought he was basically rude, to be honest, in any ways. So I had to verbally disagree with him, and then finally he had to allow me to enter the airport terminal, where actually I stayed for more than 16 hours because my flight got delayed, and then I could board my flight. Now, the thing is that except that kind of situation, I didn't find anybody else to be that much annoying in the Delhi airport. Moreover, what I found in Delhi airport was that Delhi airport was honestly very crowded, and of course there was no distancing, or even there were people who were not wearing masks inside the airport, although they are keeping on telling you that you should wear masks, you should also maintain the distance of 6 feet. Nobody, not nobody, but more than 20% of the population in the airport were not wearing masks. What I really found nice about the Delhi airport was that the people who were attending to the cleaning of the airport and cleaning of the bathrooms were very attentive, throughout the whole 16 hours, 16 to 17 hours that my flight was delayed. I was staying over there, and I saw that they kept on cleaning the bathrooms and the floors regularly. Like every 20 minutes, somebody would come and clean the floors. So that was really nice of them. The whole time they were like attending it, and they were making sure that everything was nice for the passengers. Now the problem is the passengers themselves are actually not following the rules. They are not wearing masks, they are not maintaining the distance. It's not the problem of the terminal people, but actually the problem of the passengers themselves, which can be easily avoided. But of course, this is India, and everybody has their own kind of, you know, rules. So you cannot really tell people to wear masks or even maintain distances. The one thing I felt was a kind of inconvenience for some of the passengers who were ordering food in the Delhi terminal was that basically they would call out your flight number, and then like which flight you are going in, but not your name. So sometimes when they don't call your name out, it's very hard for you to understand if they are providing you or providing your fellow passengers. And I think that was a confusion in the Delhi terminal. But itself, the whole 17 hours that I was there in the Delhi terminal, I didn't feel it was a huge deal. To be honest, the lounges are overfilled. If you want to stay in the lounges right now, you might have to pay somewhere between 6,000 rupees to 8,000 rupees, or 6,000 to 8,000 INR, in order to stay in the lounge. And in the lounge, it was overpacked. So honestly, I just stayed in the terminal. So I was hopping in seats throughout the terminals, and even in the terminals closer to the area of number 62 and number 48, there are some of the sleeping bed kind of uh, places that are available for uh, travelers who might be taking longer time. So you can actually take rest over there if you do not feel comfortable in sitting throughout the whole time. So it's not such an uncomfortable situation. But of course, staying in an airport for more than 17 hours is really hard. I mean, for me, most of the times, like throughout my whole travel, I was in airports for longer than 50 hours, because I was basically hopping in between four airports, and that's why it was like more than 50 hours that I was in airports itself. So that's why for myself, I was definitely maintaining this social distancing, because without following the social distancing, it is really hard, and I don't really want anybody to suffer just because of my tardiness. So next to that, once like my time was over in Delhi, the flight from Delhi to Kolkata, in that flight they were even providing the face shield. So I think the face shield was really important and nice, and having the face shield was extra protective, because in the flight from Delhi to Kolkata there was no distance between the passengers, and uh, this flight was pretty comfortable. Even in this flight, they provided us with complete meals, and actually they provided with two meals instead of one meal for only a 1.5 hour flight, uh, and that was kind of good. So overall, my flying experience during the COVID was not that bad, but just to give you an idea, you might have too much of lag times in the airport. So plan ahead of time that what you may need and what you may not need. Make sure to carry with yourself a sanitizer, because in the airports there are stores that are selling sanitizers, but having your own sanitizer is much more safer. And also, I wish you a very safe and good time for traveling if you're traveling in and around different cities during this COVID time. And even if it's not a COVID time, I wish you safe travels and enjoy your flight. This is a very different experience of wearing a mask, wearing shield, and traveling around, having the kind of social distancing, and uh, like seeing around yourself, like people kind of being paranoid about certain things is also pretty funny. But you should understand like where they are coming from. So for future generations who might have not faced these situations in future, you might find that like why are these people so weird, but this is what our times are like. So I really had a good experience and I would like to know about your experience of travel, like where you traveled during COVID 2020, and then like what your experience was, what went over, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. If you like this video, don't forget to give a thumbs up and don't forget to share this video with other people for whom this video might be informative and or who would want to know like how the travel is going on during this time of the year. I wish you safe travels and I am hoping to see your comments below. So don't forget to comment, and if you like this video, if you like the contents of my videos, make sure to subscribe to my channel, and till next time, bye.